punished for being too pretty. Sounds strange, right? But it happens. People assume you're less capable, less serious, or less intelligent just because of how you look. And it's one of those things you don't really think about until it happens to you. And it's something that happens to women, especially women in Hollywood. And they've been dealing with it for years. And I know this sounds like a first world problem. I mean, who wouldn't want to be called too pretty, right? But trust me, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So today we're diving into a question that almost feels like a paradox. Can you really be punished for being too attractive? Isn't that what we're all looking for? Well, Margot Robbie has managed to turn this around in one of the smartest moves of her career. And trust me, there's a lot we can learn here, not just about Hollywood, but about how we can navigate stereotypes and biases in our own lives. So let's start with Margot. When she first arrived in Hollywood, fresh off the Gold Coast of Australia, she was immediately put into a box. The pretty blonde role. I mean, this wasn't surprising. Hollywood has a long history of reducing women to their looks. Marilyn Monroe was the first, the pretty woman who gets by on charm and beauty. But her big break came with The Wolf of Wall Street, where she played Naomi, the bombshell wife of Jordan Belfort. Sure, it was a role that fit the stereotype, but what was incredible was how she played it. She didn't just play the sexy character, she made Naomi complex, interesting, smart. She flipped the script, but still, the industry wasn't sure if she was more than just her looks. And honestly, that's a thing. It's a thing for women in Hollywood and in real life that we face all the time. We hear a lot about the beauty penalty, which is basically the idea that if you're attractive, people assume you are less capable. It's that age-old stereotype that beauty and brains couldn't possibly mix. The problem with this, though, is that it's not just about beauty, it's about people making assumptions. They see someone who's attractive and they decide they can't possibly be as smart or as driven or as competent. There's a psychological explanation for why we do this. It's called cognitive bias. We make judgments about people based on first impressions and traits that are easy to recognize. Beauty especially gets linked to warmth and kindness and charm, but for some reason it also gets associated with being less serious and less intelligent, and that is especially for women. But here's the thing, it's not just in Hollywood. There's research showing that women who are considered too pretty often face judgment in the workplace as well. In one study, people were more likely to assume that a beautiful woman would be less qualified for a high-level job compared to a less attractive woman, even if their resumes were identical. It's this crazy idea that because someone is attractive, they can't possibly be good at their job, or they must have used their looks to get ahead, baby. It's wild when you think about it, right? You get penalized, not just for your skills, but for your appearance too. So now let's talk about how Margot turned this idea on its head. Instead of trying to run from the pretty blonde stereotype, she leaned into it, not just as a gimmick, but with purpose. Instead of rejecting her looks, she embraced them, and she used the stereotype to her advantage. One of the most powerful things that Margot did was reframe how people saw her. When she was told she was too pretty to be taken seriously, she didn't fight back in a defensive way. Instead, she said, well, That's not my problem to solve. It's their problem to overcome. Think about that for a second. She didn't feel the need to prove herself in the way people expected. She showed that she was more than just her looks by stepping into roles that challenged those assumptions. She didn't just take on the typical hot girl roles that would have been so easy. She chose characters that had real depth, like Tonya Harding in I, Tonya, or Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. These weren't just roles, they were opportunities to show that she was far more complex than anyone had assumed. So what was Margot's strategy? So what Margot did here, it's actually pretty brilliant, and it's a psychological strategy called strategic stereotype embrace. Most people try to fight stereotypes. They try to prove they're not what people expect them to be. But Margot used the stereotype as leverage. She said, okay, you think I'm just a pretty face? Watch me use that against you. Instead of being boxed in by it, she controlled it. She made it possible for people to look at her, or impossible for people to look at her only one way. She wanted to change the conversation around how women are perceived and their value. And it worked. She proved that you can be beautiful and talented and capable and a powerhouse in your own right. Barbie was a masterstroke in that respect. It wasn't just a movie, it was a commentary on beauty standards and how society views women. She played Barbie, a literal doll, but turned it into something that sparked a huge conversation about how women are expected to look, expected to act, and exist in the world. So what's the takeaway here? Margot's story is more than just a Hollywood tale. It's about how society places expectations on people based on their appearances, and how those stereotypes can limit us and kill our soul. Have you ever felt judged or underestimated because of how you look, or because of some other label that people put on you? And how did you flip the narrative? Drop a comment below and share your story. Let's keep the conversation going. And hey, if you found this video inspiring, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with somebody who needs a reminder that they don't have to fit into anybody else's mold. Because, as Margot Robbie has shown us, sometimes the best way to break the ceiling isn't to shatter it. It's to make everyone question why it was there in the first place.